Here is our annual series on financial management. It's packed full of wisdom. It's taken by our very own Mark Pomeroy. It's called 100. Enjoy it.
Well, hey there, Elevate family. Great to have you with us this week for week 2 of our brand new series called 100. Now, every year we very intentionally teach a series on financial management, looking at what God has to say about how we can manage our finances well. Because look, let's face it, it's something we all have to deal with, and if it's done well, it's incredibly freeing, it's incredibly powerful. On the other hand, if financial management is done poorly, then it robs us of peace and joy and opportunities. It brings in stress and anxiety and relational tension. And that's not God's best for us. So we hit that every single year. And this year, called 100, we launched last week talking about give, this idea that we, as best as we can understand, God's overall biblical pattern for financial management is give, save, live. So last week we talked about give, and you can go back and listen to that on our podcast. Just go to any of the podcast platforms or podcast apps and search for Elevate Church Perth. While you're there, you might as well follow or like or subscribe it. Then you'll have it every week. But that message is there from last week. Today, I want to hit the second part of this. Give, save, live. I want to talk today about this area of savings. Now, here is a pretty typical scenario that over time, over our working lives, generally speaking, our earning capacity, our income trends upwards. Now, I know it's not always linear. I know it varies from person to person, but I'm just saying over years and certainly over decades, for many of us, our income increases. And many of you know that because that's already happened for you in your working life. And that's terrific. Except too many people have this pattern going on. And that is that as their income generally increases over time, too many people also increase their spending in such a way that their spending at best matches or keeps pace with their income. You know, more money, I'll get a nicer car. More money, we'll get a bigger house. More money, we'll go on more lavish vacations. And our spending tracks with our increased income. It's a pattern I just call live, live, live. Notorious B.I.G. said, "More money, more problems." Well, that's not always true, but this pattern that we're talking about, where your spending keeps up with your income, then it's more money, more spending, same problems, because you have spent consistently everything that you've earned. And this pattern, this desire, this behavior of spending everything we earn, it's often fueled by the notion or the messaging that our quality of life is hitched to our standard of living. In other words, the assumption is as we raise our standard of living, our quality of life will automatically go up in correlation to that. And the corporate marketing industry exists to fuel this narrative that if you buy this, whatever this is, you'll be happier. And we get bombarded by that messaging all day, every day. TV, radio, social media, web browsing, pop-up ads, and on it goes. If you buy this, you'll be happier. And I'm not dunking on marketers. They're just doing their job. This is all on us. If we buy into this narrative that if you increase your standard of living, you'll have a better quality of life. And by the way, that's sometimes true. I know for us, for many, many years, every house we lived in had a gas cooktop. And look, I'm a fan of gas cooktops when you're wok frying, stir frying, absolutely. But they're a nightmare to keep clean. There's gadgets and you've got to lift the hob and schmutz and oil and burn, gets under there and it's just too much contours and moving parts. It's an absolute hot mess. Plus, I can remember very early in our marriage, we lived on a second story apartment and we had a gas cooktop and Louie and I were in the kitchen together and out of nowhere on our gas cooktop, we had a fat fire. The olive oil in our fry pan caught alight and Louisa punched out the fly screen of our kitchen window and chucked the fry pan and the burning oil out the window, finding its way onto the ground floor. I can't remember if someone was walking past at the time. I hope not. It's been a while. Well, look, now we have induction. We've got a different house. We upgraded our cooktop from gas to induction. And here's the beauty of induction. Yeah, it's a higher entry cost, generally speaking, but it's lower running costs. It has a rapid boil feature. Listen to this. We can boil a saucepan of water in 60 to 90 seconds. Hello. Think about that over decades, how much time you've saved in your life. It's flat, so cleaning it is just one spray and one wipe and we're done. Plus, because our kitchen is still in our current house on the second floor, nobody is at risk of being hit on the head with a fry pan full of burning, flaming olive oil. So look, there's a place to upgrade. There's a place for newer, better, shinier, bigger. That's not the idea here. I'm not saying don't ever spend money, don't ever upgrade. I am saying don't spend all of your money. Don't live with no reserves. Because, for example, and I've talked about this as being potentially a source of stress, if you spend everything you earn, then when something breaks, and look, let's face it, something always breaks. Car, something in your house, something always breaks. When something breaks, the actual breakage isn't the source of stress. I mean, it's a source of inconvenience, but it's not the source of stress. The source of stress comes in if you don't have the reserves, the cash, the financial reserves to pay for the replacement or the repair of that thing. That's the source of stress, no reserves. And I was reminded of this around Christmas time this year. I had two very contrasting interactions with two separate people. One of them, someone in my sphere, I'm going to call him Bill. Bill received a bill. Now, let me tell you a bit about Bill. Bill's in his mid-50s. Bill's been working full-time since he left school at the age of 17. So nearly 40 years of full-time work. And Bill received a bill, out of nowhere, admittedly, for $1,600, $1,600. And Bill automatically went into full-blown stress mode because Bill didn't have $1,600, didn't have any cash reserves, because for nearly 4 decades, Bill has been spending everything he's earned. So it wasn't the unexpected bill that was the source of stress, it was the lack of financial reserves to pay that bill that was the source of stress. Now, by contrast, I met a guy named John. He owns a rendering business. He came and did a quote for us, and we were just, chit-chatting while he's doing the quote. And John said to me that on Christmas Eve, just gone 2021, Christmas Eve, his whole house air conditioning system broke down. Now, in Perth, the following day, Christmas Day, it was 45 degrees Celsius. If you want to know what that's like, what that is in Fahrenheit, it's as hot as the sun, people. And John, not good timing for your air conditioning to break down, because we then had this solar kind of heat wave take over Perth for several weeks to come. And John, he had his air conditioner break down. But the thing that was different with John compared to Bill is, yes, John was incredibly inconvenienced. And the thing that caused him to lie awake at night was heat, not stress, because John had, over his working life, created some reserves. So he had the money in reserve to repair his air conditioning. And so here's the reality, and this is a message you don't hear very often. You can actually increase your standard of living, spend more, buy bigger, newer, shinier, upgrade, and actually decrease your quality of life. More anxiety, less peace, less joy, more stress, more relational conflict. And that's not God's best for us. So here's what God recommends: that we can avoid this decreased quality of life by creating some margin. This is what it looks like over time in a graph. That over time, by consistently and intentionally spending less than we earn, we create that thing called margin. And margin allows us to stash away reserves, to save some reserves. Now, before I give some maybe just hot tips on how you can accomplish that, let me just bust one myth that pops up every now and then as a reason to sort of hide behind why we shouldn't, as Jesus followers, we shouldn't save. And it goes like this. Jesus said, we're not to worry about tomorrow. And yeah, he did. He said we're not to worry about tomorrow. He didn't say, however, we're not meant to prepare for tomorrow, plan for tomorrow, save for tomorrow. His instruction was not to worry about tomorrow. And here's the thing I know about not having cash reserves. You will worry about tomorrow when that thing breaks. Here's the thing I know about cash reserves. You won't worry about tomorrow when that thing breaks if you have some reserves. In fact, Solomon, one of the wisest people, in his book of Proverbs, he said it this way: the wise person saves for the future, but the foolish person spends whatever he gets. Wise, foolish, saves, spends. So we talk a lot about, every year when we do our financial management series, we talk a lot about some of the things we've learned from mine and many of your financial guru. His name's Dave Ramsey. He's a Jesus follower. He's a kingdom guy. He talks about the bare minimum of financial reserves that that he recommends we save for and have sitting in reserves is, first of all, an emergency fund with $1,000. Just sitting there, out of reach. It's not for the next Domino's order. It's not for the next family outing. It's $1,000 just parked for when it breaks. Just sitting there. Now, he then talks about attacking debt. And I'm going to talk about debt next week. And once you've eliminated your consumer debt, all of your consumer debt, not your home loan, consumer debt, credit cards, store cards, personal loans, then look to save a reserve of 3 to 6 months of your living expenses. Not 3 to 6 months that you're going to use on a family vacation. No, just in living expenses, just sitting there. And this is for some of the more worst case scenarios, once something breaking. This is like if you were to lose your job, if you were to have some health issue come your way that you weren't able to work if your business hit a pretty significant speed bump, you as an individual or a family have 3 to 6 months of living expenses. And again, this will better position you to not worry about tomorrow. So we talk about our best understanding of the biblical pattern of financial management as being give, save, live. Let me put some numbers on that. When we talk about give, our best biblical understanding is we give our first 10%, and we make that 10% both a goal and a minimum. So if right now you're not giving 10%, God, your first 10%, start somewhere. Start with your first 1%. Take a next step to 3%. Take a next step to 6%, and eventually get to 10. So there's 10% give. Then, and here's the number, 10% savings. And again, apply the same approach of taking next steps. If you're currently saving 0, start with 1%. Go into 3%. Take a next step to 6%, and eventually hit 10%. And by the way, that can even be a minimum. But 10, 10, and then live. 80%. 80% is living. That's food, petrol. That's your everyday. That's mortgage. That's utilities. That's your internet service provider, and so on and so forth. Live off the rest. So let me dive in with you. Just a couple of friendly tips from me to you about maybe just to get the wheels turning about how you can move towards, if you're not already there, move towards saving 10%. The first thing, and I encourage this every single year, have 2 bank accounts. Have a spending account. The bank's going to call it a savings account, but it's not. It's your spending account. And then have a second account, and that's your savings account. And you'll probably have your pay, your wage, your salary go into your spending account. That's great. The day it hits there, whether you get paid weekly, fortnightly, monthly, the day your income comes into your spending account, give to God first, and then transfer your savings to your savings account second, before you start living, before you start paying bills and mortgage and rent and electricity. 10, 10, 80. That second 10, the savings, put that into a separate, specific savings account. Now, in order to create something approaching 10% saving, you can either earn more, and by the way, earn more and choose not to spend it all, so you automatically can create that margin, or spend less. So you may not, because sometimes earning more, it's going to take time. But spending less, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples, that you can do in the next 24 hours. Here's one. If you work outside the home, take a packed lunch. Take your lunch with you. I married into an Italian family. They have an expression, cook once, eat twice. You know, don't cook these little piddly meals. Cook a big family-sized meal with some left over, there's the key word, and for lunch the next day, take the leftover for lunch. Because maybe I'm just going to throw some sort of rounded out numbers. To buy your lunch every day, I'm going to put the figure of $10 on it. $10. So let's just say this. Let me run the numbers. $10 a day, if you, instead of spending $10 a day, you reduced your expenses by taking your lunch with you, $10 a day, 5 days a week, 48 weeks. You're allowed to have 4 weeks of annual leave here in Australia. $10 a day, 5 days a week, 48 weeks is $2,400. Over a year, okay, you're going to tell me it doesn't sound like much. Just hang in there, okay? Here's the second one. Make your takeaway coffee to go on the way to work, in the car, on the bus, on the train. Make it at home. Now, I'm not going to tell you to give up coffee. I'm not evil. And I am not encouraging you to downgrade to instant coffee. I'm not a psychopath, okay? But here's the reality. There is so many very reasonably priced home coffee, and I'm not going to give you a barista course here right now, but there are ways to make coffee at home using fresh coffee from a local roastery, so you're still supporting local business, that you can make at home that are delicious and you don't feel like you're ripping yourself off, and they don't cost, and I'm going to put this number on it, $5 like you would pay for a takeaway coffee. Which, by the way, if you've been tracking this recently, $5 is going to become somewhat elusive for a takeaway coffee from anywhere except for your local petrol station, which, you know. So coffee, $5 a day, 5 days a week, 48 weeks of the year, $1,200. So if you were to do this, these are just examples. Take your $10 lunch and your $5 takeaway coffee each day, and instead of spending that, you save that. Over the year, you will have saved $3,600. And before you say, oh, Mark, it's $3,600, doesn't sound like much, let me ask you this. If I was to reach through the screen now and give you $3,600, would you take it? Yeah, you would. So you could actually create that margin by those two simple changes, adjustments. Now, by the way, here's something that is important to consider when it comes to saving, that over time, this accumulates. And so that $3,600 a year over 25 years equals $90,000. That's without earning any interest. Now, if you were to throw in a very reasonable, modest 5% return each year on your $3,600 savings because you're taking your lunch and you're making your takeout morning coffee over 25 years, that $90,000 will have grown to $171,817.56, nearly twice. And these are just examples. What other examples can you kind of fish around? Things you've subscribed for that you no longer use. Things that you've sort of bought into the myth that you need to have that level or that brand or that. And it's like, really? Do you think, is it a need? Like, can you actually get the same use, reliability, utility, even, satisfaction from a slightly less expensive thing? And the delta, the difference, can create some margin, and that margin you can put into savings. It adds up over decisions, week on week, month on month, year on year. You can create some reserves. Think about your car, people. If you have a car loan, think about your car this way. How many hours a day does your car spend just sitting around? While you're sleeping, while you're watching TV, while you're working, how many hours a day? And if you've got a car loan, you're actually paying your car to do nothing, which doesn't sound like good financial management to me. I mean, if you're a business owner, are you going to pay somebody, one of your staff who just sits around for like maybe 22, 23 hours a day? No. So if you've got a car loan, maybe something you could think about is selling that car and buying an equally reliable, because ultimately cars are really about getting from A to B, not impressing the neighbors. That's just like, really? Selling the car that you owe money on, buying a car that you can afford, that you don't have to take out a loan for, and you can take the money that you're paying on the loan and start to put that into savings. Again, it's doable. Within 24 hours, you can do those sorts of things. So I'm going to leave it to you to figure out any other ways you can save, but I want to get your motor running, get the cogs turning. What other things, what other areas? How can I create ways to give God my first 10%, pay myself in savings the second 10%, and learn to live off the 80%? And next week, I want to talk about how we can live off the 80%, how we can get rid of consumer debt, how we can, because this week I talked about how we, avoid spending everything we earn. Some people, maybe even some of you, you're in the habit of spending more than you earn. Well, let's talk about that next week. See you then.